The reigning back-to-back SEC Eastern Division champions are in camp. The Mizzou Tigers look for a third consecutive trip to Atlanta. We bring in Jack Hummel of KOMU to help us sort out the Tigers in practice for a second day. Jack, we know that leadership's always important. Head coaches across the country talk about it constantly. Where is that leadership going to come from? The naming of the captains is an indicator of who those guys could be. Of course, thanks so much for joining us. And could we start there with the naming of the captains for the Tigers?
Sure, Mark. And first off, thanks for having me again. It's always a pleasure. Like you said, starting off the year, we just got into camp. The Mizzou Tigers are kicking off their third consecutive, hopefully, season of winning the East. And so it obviously starts with leadership, and Gary Pinkel emphasizes it constantly. They just put out a video, I believe it was 2 or 3 days ago, solely about the Mizzou family and the leadership of this group. And what the 4 big guys who were just named yesterday, Russell Hansbrough, Ian Simon, Kenya Dennis, and Evan Boehm. And 2 of those guys I want to highlight especially, and that's Evan Boehm and Russell Hansbrough. Both guys have been leaders since they walked in the door in Columbia. Right from the start, whether it's on the field, off the field, these are 2 guys that jump right in, and they're leaders. They're natural-born leaders. They lead up, on the football field and off the football field. They lead this team, and they're part of the reason why this team has been so successful in the SEC East. And they've gotten their trip to Atlanta year after year this year, and hopefully make it for a third this year, being their captain year, their seniors. So I'm excited about it. I mean, these are 4 great guys, and Gary Pinkel is putting the team on these guys back this year.
Boehm at center with 40 consecutive starts. He would be in rarefied air starting like 52, 53, 54 consecutive games at a particular school. Not a whole lot of guys are able to accomplish that in a single collegiate career. Let's look at the offense. The national perception is that you don't have too many playmakers on offense, that there's some issues on the periphery, unproven guys, maybe not SEC caliber players in regards to athleticism, speed. Can you set up the offense for us?
Sure. And I mean, we'll start off, like you said, and offense has really been an issue for this Missouri Tigers team the last, call it 3 or 4 years. There's a question of guys on the outside, wide receivers, and especially when you lose a guy like Bud Sasser, who, recorded 1,000+ yards in his career. And, they're going to look to wide receiver Wesley Leftwich, but he doesn't need to record the 1,000+ yards that Bud Sasser had. We're looking to have someone be present on that outside for Maty Mauk, and that lack of production from the wide receiver position these past 2 years has, blatantly shown, and it's obvious. And so that's a position where you're not going to fill it in, just like you're not going to fill in the role of Shane Ray. You're going to look for guys to step up and produce and fill in that role as best they can. We don't need someone to match that 1,000-yard plus. And so I think we're going to look to that, but then also going to Maty Mauk. You and I, it sounds like we've had this conversation over and over and over again. But Maty Mauk is a leader on this team as well. A lot of people looked for him to maybe be one of the 4 captains that were named yesterday, and he wasn't. He's a junior, but at the same time, he's in a leadership position solely because of his position on the field. And news broke recently that he's dedicating the 2015 season to his father, who was just diagnosed with colorectal cancer. Obviously, that's extremely crushing for anyone. And Maty reached out to the offensive coordinator. It was a pretty interesting story. He reached out to the offensive coordinator, Josh Henson, night or 2 nights after, woke up to 8 missed calls from coaches, including Gary Pinkel, all calling to just check in on Maty. The same with his teammates, Evan Boehm, who's very, very close friends with Maty. The fan support was in full effect with tweets, messages, well wishes, the articles from different sports writers at the end signing off their article with a well wish. That's just how it works at Missouri. It's one big family. And again, it's that Mizzou family that we talk about so much, and that goes from the leadership position as coaches as well as your 4 captains and anyone else. If you're putting on that jersey, just like in any sport, you're a leader. Not whether you're on the 4th line or 1st line. And Maty said it, and he does it often very simply. This is going to be for his dad, and he doesn't want to talk about it. And he said that, I'm just going to go out and play. Just watch me. I'm going to go do it. And that was a direct quote. I mean, he's ready. And like we talked about the last time, without the sentimental aspect of it, he went from 20% body fat to 11% body fat, clocked a 4.40 time, and that was on the Manning watch list. So, I mean, again, this is a guy who we've talked about constantly year to year. Is he ready? Is he going to be able to follow up like he had his first year, as a starter? But as far as a main need, consistency, and you decrease the number of interceptions. Those were his 2 biggest complaints. And Gary Pinkel said it blatantly. He said, we're looking at consistency this year, but there's no doubt that Maty Mauk is the most battle-tested position at the quarterback for not only the Mizzou Tigers, but much of the SEC East. He's 14-4 as a starter. He's extremely, good under pressure. And so, I mean, in my opinion, again, be ready for number 7 this year because he's ready more so than ever.
I'm sure there would be a ton of raised eyebrows, even amongst hardcore college football fans, when they hear the term and the rating, the speed record 4.4 from Maty Mauk, because he's not considered to be an athletic quarterback by people that don't cover the football team day to day and game to game. And I think it'd be hard pressed to find a quarterback who's won division championships back to back. I know James Franklin was in place for most of 2013, but back-to-back championships to a certain extent in what's considered to be the toughest conference in college football, who's been as much maligned as Maty Mauk and considered not to be a strength on the football team. So let's turn to defense, because that has been the strength, and especially a defensive end. And if there's been a calling card for this program in the SEC, and even going back to the Big 12 days, it's been a defensive end. And rushing the passer, leading the SEC in sacks again with 44 last season. No Shane Ray, no Marcus Golden. Well, that was a given. But then you've got Marcus Loud, who's been dismissed from the team. You also have Harold Brantley, who unfortunately suffered some huge injuries in a car accident. So they're taken away as well. Is there another layer of defensive ends that this team can rely on, Jack?
Well, if there is, Gary Pinkel's certainly going to have to find them. But, like we said before, you lose players like almost every team in the SEC, both West and East this year, other than, maybe Tennessee, who I believe they returned 14 or 19 starters. That's absurd. Inexperience is a concern across the board. And it's always a guessing game on how these guys are going to do. You put in a guy who maybe was a second or third string, didn't get a lot of time. You're not sure how it's going to pan out. But again, you're going to look to these guys and you're going to look to leaders to help them fill in those roles. Maybe not completely, but at least be in that role, feel comfortable, and jump in, when you're needed. Talking defensively, though, again, you're trying to fill the shoes of Shane Ray, which is almost impossible. And you're going to look to, with both Harold Brantley and a couple other players that are either injured or not going to be playing this year, you're going to look to defensive end Charles Harris. He doesn't have to fill Shane Ray's shoes alone. But the Tigers are definitely going to be looking for him to work in the void left by last season's, SEC Player of the Year, Shane Ray. Other key players that I think we want to look for, Donovan Newsome. He's a junior linebacker. I think you're going to obviously look for him in that position. But the two guys that catch my attention, and we talked about it last time, and I'm going to talk about it again, is the duo of Michael Shear and Kentrell brothers. Both of these guys combined, now hear this, both of these guys combined for over 100-plus tackles last season. Mizzou is just one of 2 schools in the entire college football to record that. Shear stands at 6'3", 235. He's from St. Louis right here. He's a redshirt junior. And Brothers is a 6'1" redshirt senior from Oklahoma. These guys are the same thing. We talk about, Mizzou defensive line, how strong it is. These guys have been groomed for starting roles by, in the path of guys like Shane Ray and, junior-senior combo that's really looking for a breakout year. Put simply, regardless of Mizzou football, if these guys, what college football player doesn't? If these guys want to play college football or professional football after their college careers, this is the year for them to stand out. This is their year to break out. Again, you have 6'4", 300-pound defensive lineman Josh Augusta. Harold Brantley is out of the picture right now. Unfortunately, like you said, he suffered the severe career-ending injuries or season-ending injuries, a car accident earlier in the summer. This is his time to step up. If there's ever been a time for Josh Augusta to step up in a starting position, it's now. Last season he saw quite a bit of time, but this season is really going to be, the time where he can step up and make a name for himself on that D-line. Again, you have junior cornerback Arion Penton. You'll look for him to step up, hopefully stay out of trouble. All these guys, like we said, we've had guys dismissed from the team. They're looking to stay clean this year. And so I think, again, you're going to look for these guys to step up, fill in the spots you need. You don't need to replace somebody. You need to mimic anyone or fill any shoes. You need to just find your role in the team. And that's the thing Gary Pinkel emphasizes so much is he looks for role players. He doesn't look for a star player in every position. It's a role player. Maty Mauk is a role player. Kentrell Brothers is a role player. Shear is a role player. And when combined, they do things that most teams can't. I mean, look at it. In 2013, Mizzou was projected to finish 6th in the East. They finished first, putting themselves in the SEC championship. We go to 2014, Doubters were projected to finish 4th. Again, we proved critics wrong. Go put themselves on a flight to Atlanta. I mean, and it's again, how are we going to do this year? Are we going to fill the roles that, outside at wide receiver? How's Maty Mauk going to do defense? We've lost these guys. Mizzou finds a way to do it. Even guys like us that, do this for a living, we don't know how at times, but they figure out a way to do it. They've, put players in roles that have been, groomed these years. So I think, if there's a year that Mizzou has the most potential to do well, I think it's this year. Confidence is on their side. And you tell any, 18 to 22-year-old that's being passed over in preseason polls despite winning 2 years in a row, putting themselves in a championship game, they're going to take it as motivation. They're going to run with it head first. And that's always been Mizzou's type of mentality, regardless if they're projected first or last. They're going to, put their head down and their eyes up, and they're going to go ahead and go forward with it. So I'm excited about it. Offense, defense, all around.
Yeah, Jack, I think it's an interesting point because it's not only the overall narrative for the team nationally, it's also a positional narrative because you probably, again, maybe not individually, but as a collective unit, have one of the better back sevens on defense in the SEC, but hardly anybody knows it. They're going to point to LSU, Georgia, even Tennessee in the division. But Missouri not given a whole lot of credit there. So I'm going to jump on something you just mentioned. The fourth place selection by the media last season, sixth place the year before. You win back-to-back. I think another fourth place projection this year. So that's the easy narrative nationally. That is the overriding narrative that this team is either overachieving or underrated or something like that. But for a guy that covers the team on a daily basis, is that something that's talked about a lot by the beat writers and the beat reporters, or is that tired and kind of passed aside and other things focused on?
Sure. I think, and, being a writer myself as well as broadcast, you see it and you read it and you hear it. But I mean, at the beginning, we won in 2013. We won it, going into 2014, a lot of doubt, and rightfully so. We're a new team in the SEC. It's the toughest division in football, regardless what anyone will say. It's tough. And so I think going into 2014, people, had a chip on their shoulder. Oh, well, why are we ranked, higher? This isn't right. We're being slanted. And I thought it was justifiable. Okay, we won 1 year. Let's see how we do 2014. 2014, we win. And I think then, everyone was on the side, at least in Columbia, of why are we higher? This is ridiculous. And I think, at the time, Mizzou used it as far as Mizzou football, they used it as motivation, and they still do. But I think now it's almost you accept it, and whether or not that's right, whether or not that's, bias, whatever you want to call it, they've accepted it. Mizzou Tigers have accepted it. They've said, sure, again, they've done it in the past. Why change it up now and, rank us third or second? Let's go ahead and we'll see what happens, and we'll do it again. Let's not change it up. And so I don't know whether it's people are getting used to it. People are just accepting it. They're becoming, callous to the fact that we have all these doubters against us and these naysayers. But I mean, in the end, it's not going to it's not what matters now. We've seen teams that have been ranked first and finished second to last. We've seen, every bit of it. Teams that have climbed the rankings within the first 3 weeks. It really doesn't matter, and that's the Tigers' mentality. And Gary Pinkel said it best. I'm not sure if I can quote him spot on, but it was, at the beginning, yeah, it bothered me, but it bothers the players more. Now I'm just used to it, and I think they're using it as more motivation. They're used to it, but they're still using it as that strong motivation. Again, I mean, I'm almost 20 years old. Any group of 18-year-olds, you tell someone that they can't do something, they're going to make it a fact and go out and do it. And that's exactly what the Missouri Tigers have done the last 2 years. And we'll see if, 3's a charm.
Jack, I think it also speaks to the influence of the recruiting rankings. I think some people look at the recruiting rankings and think, how can a program that's always ranked 25th, 30th, 35th compete with schools that are ranked in the top 5 or 10 every year? So it's going to catch up at some point, but it hasn't to date. And it speaks to player development there at Mizzou. No question about that. I want to be understood here that I give all the credit for this program and this coaching staff for winning back-to-back championships with impressive records. It wasn't like it was a 4-way tie, 7-1, 7-1, 14-2 in the SEC the last 2 years. The schedule has been a bit of a favor, but the Mizzou Tigers can't of course, fix who they play in the Western Division. The Western Division has been better. The East is still probably the second, third, or fourth best division in college football. Okay, we spin that forward to this schedule, which at least the early part seems extremely manageable, Jack, to get off to a great start.
What the Tigers do, again, what they do have to their advantage is the start of their schedule. Most teams, you look in the West, and there's no break, and maybe that goes to show the strength of the two versus one another. But I mean, for the Tigers, if you're going to use any scheduling to your advantage, this is the year to do it. You start off with 3, call it lower end teams: SEMO, Arkansas State, and UConn. So I mean, you're going into your first 3 games, and which should all be, and I'll say it now, they should all be wins, and they should be strong wins, and it should be an opportunity for guys to get comfortable. You start out your season playing a team like, Georgia or, Arkansas. It's going to be a tougher game. You have 3 games where you can jump right in, get 3 W's on the schedule, and go into your SEC schedule, hopefully confident as well as, not injury-free. And you can go in knowing, okay, well, this is our team. We're going to go in. Now we're confident. We've got 3 games under our belt. Let's get after it. Then you open up your SEC schedule. You have Kentucky, South Carolina, Florida, and Georgia. Decent teams. I mean, you jump into Kentucky, who we played last year, and it was a closer game. South Carolina is going to be a tougher game again. We've had the trash talk going on at SEC Media Days, so it's going to make for a fun afternoon game. But again, it's going to be a good game. These are all going to be, these SEC games are going to be exciting games this year, both from an offensive and defensive standpoint, as well as the Georgia game wrapping up. And then you get into Arkansas, and you get into, call it playoff time and crunch time, as far as we'll find out who goes into the East and who wins the East and goes into the championship game. So, I mean, it's going to be exciting, and I think Missouri does have a schedule this year. And, I haven't really studied other team, Arkansas, Kentucky, South Carolina's schedules. But, I mean, Mizzou does have a good start to their schedule. Is it an easy schedule? By no means, no. But I think they're going to go into this season with confidence if they can get these 3 first games under their belt. And that's going to take preparation, and that's, they reported for camp the 5th. It's grind time right now, and hopefully you can get those 3 under your belt and, continue on as you get into the East.
It's always a strong discussion. Jack Hummel from KOMU to talk some Mizzou football with the Tigers in camp for the first couple days. Jack, thanks so much for joining us.
Mark, thanks for having me. It's always fun.